We also talked about the pond that is located on the property being able to be used for fire mitigation, as well as the potential to use a cistern. This is just a reminder of the fire hydrant locations. The aerial was provided to you guys last time in the meeting. The image in the bottom right corner was provided by Tri-County, so it just confirms the locations of the fire hydrants. These images are of the UVWA irrigation ditches on the property and in proximity to the property. The image on the left is the ditch that is along the east property line between the Proc property and the Snafflebit subdivision. The picture on the right is the ditch along the northern property line of the neighbor to the north of Proc, which is the flag lot. The picture in the middle shows both ditches in relation to the entrance to the venue. The applicant stated that they met with UVWA, however, staff has not received a copy of said communications. I did speak with them before the meeting. They have tried to email it to me a couple of times, but I have not received it, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. But they do have those communications from UVWA. This is just an example of lighting that they submitted to us. So in the top left corner, that's what it would look like, and then they supplied some of these images as to what the lighting would look like on the property at night with what they are proposing. Access was discussed with the county engineer. He is here tonight as well to answer any questions in relation to the access specifically. The county road standards for commercial use, which is also listed as a local road, is 2 7.5-foot wide lanes with 2-foot shoulders, which is a total of 19 feet wide. The existing access meets the rural driveway standards, which is 20 feet wide, so it meets the 19-foot wide minimum for the commercial use road standards. And neither of these standards require paving. A secondary and emergency access easement has not been obtained at this point. So these are some of the images that staff took when we were out on a site visit. The top left is the entrance from Tessman traveling west from 1600 Road, and then that bottom right is the entrance from Tessman traveling south from D Road. So that's that 90-degree right-hand turn. And then this is a close-up of the entrance to the property. The gate that you see here is for the neighbor, which is the flag lot to the west. Staff met with the county sheriff. He expressed concern for the traffic on both Tessman and 1600 roads. He stated that not a lot of accidents have happened on Tessman, but the 90-degree right-hand turn has caused problems in the past. 1600 Road is more of a concern as they have issues with high speeds. The line of sight at the intersection of Tessman and 1600 Road is also a concern as there is a large cottonwood stump that hinders the views of traveling public. Staff did propose a T intersection with a 3-way stop as a possibility to help mitigate traffic issues. So these are some of the images. The top left is the 1600 Road intersection. So this is the DMEA electrical and then the culvert and head gate that is sitting there. And then the bottom right is, I've pointed out where that tree stump is. So people have to pull up a little bit further to see past it for a line of sight onto 1600 Road. I did include this again. This was just the circulation from the traffic study. That traffic after leaving the site would either go north up to D Road or they would go east out to 1600 Road. And then I included the project trip generation and timing from the traffic study as well again. So in regards to stormwater, staff did reach out to CDPHE for confirmation on whether or not the stormwater permit would be needed, but we have not received communications as of yet. The applicants did supply documents from the state in regards to the type of liquor license they would need, which is a lodging and entertainment liquor license. And then the applicants have agreed to amend the hours of operations to end all music and alcohol at midnight, which would allow them time to clean up and close the venue by 1:30 a.m. So with that, staff is asking your commission to consider PLN 22-066 PROC, a limited use permit application in accordance with the LUC, as well as conditions, and ask your commission to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And that concludes my presentation. The applicants are here. Again, the county engineer is here, and I'm not sure if the traffic engineer who did the traffic study is here. He is here? Okay, so he's in the back corner there. That's Skip Hudson. So he can answer specific questions in regards to the traffic study.
Thanks, Kate. So before Zach, I'd like to make sure the Planning Commission, if you have any questions regarding Kate's presentation, this would be a good time to ask.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, Victoria?
I have an inquiry.
Sure.
I would like to know what law or statute allows us to act as a legislative body while violating our bylaws.
You're not acting in this capacity. You're not acting as a legislative body. You're acting as a quasi-judicial body, first of all. And we will be getting to that part of the discussion.
Okay, amend my inquiry. What laws or otherwise statute allows us to act as a quasi-judicial body without following our bylaws?
Who said we're not following our bylaws?
We're not following our bylaws in multiple ways right now.
We had a decision about that. Be happy to talk about that later. We have that on the agenda.
So that would be something...
But your assessment of violating the bylaws is not necessarily shared by all of us.
So can we focus on the PROC?
No, I have another inquiry. What governs this body?
State statute.
State statute. And what part of state statute allows us to defy and violate our bylaws?
You said we're doing... That's your opinion?
No, we can read
Do
our
you
bylaws.
have a legal opinion?
I've forwarded out an email to everyone here with references to laws
When
and
did you
specific
do that?
references to our bylaws.
When
Just
did
now,
you do that?
just before the meeting. This kind of
I
procedure,
haven't seen it.
10 minutes ago, sir.
so 10 minutes ago. This kind of procedure doesn't require me to give
This
you
is
prior
terribly
notice.
disruptive.
Yeah,
I mean,
very
I'm
disruptive to the
gonna
applicant.
call for a timeout here.
Thank you.
The county attorney has weighed in. We do have the bylaws on the agenda. You have an applicant that is here. You have neighbors that are here. You have an agenda that is outlining the PROC. So at that time, when the bylaws are part of the discussion, then the planning commission can entertain those questions. And the county attorney has also weighed in, so we will be forwarding that to you as well at that time. But again, I would like you to concentrate on the applicant because they are in the audience as well as other members of the community at this time.
I understand that.
Thank you.
I do believe it's in the best interest of the community to hear that we are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. And in Robert's Rules of Order, when we are in violation of our bylaws, every decision we have is rendered null and void. Again, I have referenced all of this in the email I sent out. So before we can continue, this is a secondary incidental motion on the matter at hand. Anything we come to tonight may be rendered null and void because of the violations in our bylaws as they stand right now, as we are as a commission.
So, and that would be certainly something that somebody can determine at a later date if it may be rendered. So from that point on, I want to go back to PROC. Because if you're right, then someone may be able to do that. For now, we're going to deal with the PROC. And if there's a controversy or somebody wants to contest what we do, that's something that can happen at a later date. So do you
Mr.
have any
Chairman?
questions regarding the PROC presentation from staff?
Yes, I do. I do have a question.
Sure.
Your duties as chairman, as stated in our bylaws, is to uphold the laws and make sure that all steps taken by this commission are done dutifully. It also states that no matter takes precedence over an inquiry of information. So my inquiry is what law allows us to violate our bylaws and still act in a legislative capacity? And we are creating laws and voting on them. Is that not a legislative capacity? We are not a form of governmental branch right now?
No, we don't create laws.
You know, I would rather hear whatever the county attorney's opinion is on this, rather than to listen to Victoria, who I don't believe has a lot of greens, just
So you have
spouting
some sort
our
of legal
stuff.
filing of,
Whereas these
So I'd
guys-
like to go
Yeah.
on with this. This is
Yeah,
just
so
crazy.
Robert's Rules of Order 33, Section 3, a parliamentary inquiry. To obtain information, the chair's duty is to answer such questions as it may assist in the appropriate motion, may assist in the rise of a proper point of order, and might help the commission to understand the parliamentary situation at hand. This is, as I stated, it's a secondary implementary motion, which takes precedence over all other motions that they are connected with. It yields to, I have this all in the email. All can be applied in reference to any motion, parliamentary situation out of which they arise. All are in order, and if they require immediate attention, which they do require immediate attention, okay? Constitution of Colorado states that the ethics in government is that we must hold the respect and the confidence of the people and shall carry out all of our duties for the benefit of the people. They shall therefore avoid anything that is in violation of the public trust or even creates a justifiable impression among the members of the public that trust is being violated. By Robert's Rules of Order, when we are not following our bylaws, which I will now state because I guess the email didn't.
I thought it was.
Mr. Chairman, can I do a motion? We have put out this applicant more than once. And not because he hasn't come to the table with what needs to happen. He's come back several times. The last 2 weeks, my understanding is he's done a lot of due diligence to be able to have necessary information to us about lighting and hours of operation, etc. I truly believe, and I will agree with Steve, that this would be an attorney response if that's what she's asking for. I think we owe this man some respect and his time to show up yet again to present what he has found.
And the neighbors who are
So,
And the neighbors, yes.
And
just
all respect
to
to
address,
all the
Victoria, to
county
address your
too.
concerns, they all may be legitimate, but you sent this to us 5 minutes ago, so you
Yeah.
really
And
haven't
this
given
does not
anybody,
require
you haven't
previous
given anybody
notice.
the chance to even review
Me,
it.
okay, point of order then. Point of order that we are breaking our bylaws right now.
Okay,
Right.
and it may, everything that here may be in violation of that, and we're gonna still move forward. If someone so determines that our, whatever we do tonight can be rescinded, that'll happen at a later date, so I wanna move forward. Scott, do you have any questions for
The
Scott?
problem is we cannot move forward because we are governed
We
by
collectively as a
parliamentary,
group can decide what we wanna do.
you can't
We would need an
though.
attorney to weigh in on what you're.
Or we can just
talking
read the
about, because
laws.
You're claiming we're in violation, but.
Okay,
what
we're
do
in
you need some
violation.
sort
Know
of
the law.
proof?
Okay, so we are constituted by the Colorado State Constitution
I mean, I would
To
weigh in and wait for
ensure
the county attorney. I think Cindy said
and
it best.
preserve public
We've got to move this
confidence. We
forward.
must have the benefit
to
of
hear the
specific
applicant.
standards that guide our conduct
I don't know.
and a penalty mechanism to enforce those standards. Our specific standards that we abide by are Robert's Rules of Order. The penalty mechanism for when we don't abide by them is that everything we do is rendered null and void.
Why didn't you send this earlier? I mean, give us a chance. Not everybody's as swift as you.
You know, not everyone has time, including myself. I live a very busy life. Time to fit in
So
research about this kind of stuff.
What are you proposing that happen?
I recommend that we follow Robert's Rules of Order and we discuss the violations that are in place right now, as is our dutiful
I'm
job
not saying,
being on this commission.
I'm not saying I'm with you or against you. I'm just saying, we've brought these people in here, it had been, last 2 weeks would have been great to
And like I
give
said, all of us
a little bit of a
don't
heads
have-
up.
I
just to
agree.
Not waste everybody's time,
I
mean, he's
agree.
trying to do a job too. I'm
And
not
I-
saying you're right or wrong. and
I
don't wanna do good
apologize
stuff
for the
either.
inconvenience to the
It's
members
just-
that showed up to
you're
this
throwing-
meeting, but as it
Throwing
stands,
fuel on a fire.
this is in the best
you know.
of his interest, because anything that we decide tonight,
Well, I'm sure he would have
May
loved
not
for you to tell
uphold.
him other than right
And
now.
I disagree with you
I do.
that what you're saying is correct, so I think we should move forward.
you can disagree all you want,
That's-
but I
that's
can
fine.
state
We can
laws.
disagree.
Victoria-
Let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to disagree.
That's
We're
not
gonna
how
move
Robert's
forward.
Rules
We
of
bring
Order
this
works.
to a
Well, that's how
close
we're
If you
gonna work it.
dismiss,
and move this conversation forward. And if there is such a thing as closure in the Robert's
Virginia,
Rules of
So
Order.
there's a motion,
Victoria.
following Robert's Rules of Order, there is a motion on the table. Cindy made a motion to proceed with PROC. Was there a second to that
I
motion?
seconded that.
Here's the thing, no motion takes precedence over a parliamentary inquiry, and it must
So
be
what is your-
settled.
So
You
what
are
is
not a
your-
parliamentarian, you are not an attorney.
In Robert's
We're
Rules
gonna
of
move
Order,
forward.
every single one of us, as
Let's take
members
a
of the
vote.
commission, has a right
Let's take a
to
vote.
debate, to bring forth a motion. This is a secondary incidental
talking
motion,
to you,
which
we're
means that you cannot override it, you do not have to second it, and it must be dealt with before we
This is
can move
not
on.
an
The
Can you-
We recognize your
question is,
Would you
what
call
allows
order?
us,
Thank you.
Get off it.
We have a
Thank you.
motion and a second.
Chief.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay.
And we've noted your issue, and we still have a motion and a second. Is there
okay,
any further
parliamentary
discussion?
inquiry and requests for
Victoria.
information do not
Victoria,
require a
you're being
second.
unruly and not allowing this to move
They
forward.
are
We have a
not
motion and a
debatable.
second.
They are not debatable, and though they may be accompanied by a brief explanation, no vote is taken for me to get an answer, and we do have a lawyer present. I have read Robert's Rules of Order. If you want to supply me with something from Robert's Rules of Order that goes against what I'm saying, please do so. That's your duty as the chairman, is to inform me, as I've asked you a question, of what the laws are.
Answer her inquiry
We have
by
a
saying we're
motion
going to
and a
wait
second.
on hearing from
Can we have a vote?
attorney. Or is
Yeah,
it-
we did say that. I
Yeah.
mean, we did have an answer from the attorney, but we have it on the agenda after the hearing for the PROC, and we want to discuss it then, but she's not, doesn't seem.
Well, the reason
feel
this is
like-
relevant is because it directly affects our decision made
Maybe
tonight.
we ought to do this before, just, I don't know.
But we have
Yeah, I understand.
neighbors,
I'm
we have
with you.
an
You know how
applicant
it is to
here.
apply for.
This is obviously land use code. This is.
This is law. This is the
a
fact that
key
we
land
are
use
breaking
code.
the law.
People are mad, you're
No.
obviously with
What?
them.
No,
But
Steve.
what-
need to move on with
what
your
is
hearing.
that- Are we not abiding by our bylaws, you know?
So there are a couple different ways we're not abiding. Okay, so firstly,
Okay.
when we selected Tom Kay as chairman, that was a violation of the
Nobody
bylaws.
else.
We're going to
Right,
take
we're-
a
we-
10-minute break.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break.
Thank you.
PROC, stay where you are. We're just going to take a 10-minute break.
Man, I wish you'd have.
Recording stopped.
As a
I didn't
respect
have
for
it
me.
ready, I didn't have it ready
You knew you
until
were
Yeah, but
you.
last 10 meetings.
I had one weekend to gather this
I just got
information.
off work 10 minutes ago and got your email 7 minutes ago.
This is amazing what you are doing here.
Right.
Amazing.
I'm not
It is
doing
amazing.
anything. I'm not
Yeah.
saying she's right or wrong. I'm saying she did it in the
You
wrong
should
fashion.
have a clear discernment about it.
5 minutes before a meeting starts.
No,
You guys cut
no.
off the
You
sound.
don't
Land use
even need
code
to.
activism.
Respectfully, it's on our
Let's turn
agenda
into
to
this.
discuss later.
And respectfully, it's against Robert's Rules of Order to wait to discuss this after we make a legal decision.
But we don't have
We're
an
not
attorney
making a
here.
legal
Where's the
decision,
attorney?
we're making a
We
recommendation
are
to
the
the
body
board.
that decides.
You said there was an attorney here. What is it?
Victoria,
They
we
told
do
me
not
there's
make
an
any
attorney.
decisions. We are a recommending body. We are not making a law. We are making a recommendation.
Okay, so you read Robert's Rules of
This is
Order.
happened for a reason.
You've read the 700-page updated book that talks about everything that happens within Robert's Rules of Order.
I know there's a big help
This is
down
what you
there,
guys
this
are
out there recording. Well, this exercise.
You are all guys. Oh, come on.
Speak along.
She's probably up to it.
Stand in bylaws.
That's correct. How are we supposed to uphold the laws we don't know?
When everybody says it's not.
What attorney?
I'm not an attorney.
And it'll work out.
You attorney? I didn't go to law school.
If you need help from it, be it.
Right or wrong, she did it 2 minutes before all board.
I'm saying that I am unhappy. I have if you want to reference anything, that's why I wasn't off you. Like she said, we're
I said you did it in
required.
the wrong way. That's what I'm saying.
What is the right way when I'm the minority?
Well, what you could have did is give somebody some time for an attorney to do something, or
I
talk,
did.
or do something.
I did. I called.
When was that?
I called the commissioners. I brought this forth to them. They said it's in our hands. We had Carl tell us
And it
it's
was
in
put
our
on,
hands.
it was put on the agenda.
But the issue is that with the knowledge I have, it is unethical and immoral for me to sit here and break the law while we are doing this. We are in violation of our bylaws, which renders us null and void. That's in the rules.
Yeah.
Violating the
For
land.
years.
Just give us a-
Yeah.
But it's not going very far, very fast.
Are we back? We're ready. Let's just do it.
Recording in progress.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Victoria, your complaint is noted, and I just want to ask, what is specifically your complaint about? My role?
My inquiry, my question,
Yes.
that I'm making a motion, a secondary incidental motion, which means that it's relevant to be answered
What's
before
your
we
motion?
can. What laws allow us to act in violation of our bylaws?
I understand.
Because
That's
there
not
are
a motion,
state
it's a question.
statutes that tell us we are not allowed to break our bylaws. Robert's Rules of Order continuously states that our bylaws are our supreme governing body. If our bylaws go over Robert's Rules of Order, we follow our bylaws.
And what
Point
is,
of clarification,
what
Mr.
in the
Chair,
bylaws are
I
you
haven't heard anything of what specifically is being violated in the
What's
bylaws.
violated?
So there are two things. Your term as chair has expired, and therefore, and again, I wasn't educated the first meeting that I had here, and I was told that we can make an amendment, and it's a friendly amendment to vote you in. That's incorrect. So it was a violation of our bylaws. Secondly, the only people that are allowed to serve on this board are members who reside in unincorporated Delta County. So the people that don't reside outside of city limits are breaking our bylaws.
Okay, so can we separate those two out? Because
Yes.
the incorporated versus unincorporated, to me, is a legal opinion. I'm not sure your legal opinion will suffice to answer that right now. Your objection to the way we elected a chairman can be resolved right now if I will step down as chair. Is that fair? Is that fair? Will that address your problem?
If you
If
step
I
down
step
as
down right
chair,
now?
that section of the inquiry and that section of our illegality is solved.
Okay, so if I do that, can we proceed with the proc hearing?
Like I
I don't know
said,
about
to me, this is unethical and immoral for me with the information that I have to sit as we act outside of our capacity.
So if
We
I
are
step down,
bound
what's-
by the bylaws. That
What are we
includes,
objecting in the bylaws?
besides your chairmanship, that includes the residential status of the
But-
planning
But
commission.
again, that's a legal
You're beating around the
opinion
bush. What do
that
you
we
mean
don't
by
have
that?
quite yet.
I mean,
residential
in our
status.
bylaws, it states that you can only serve on this commission because this commission only determines things in unincorporated Delta County, that you must also reside in unincorporated Delta County.
Who doesn't? I mean, just kick it out.
Well, it's a personal thing she's having.
She doesn't.
Kick
Is
it
this
out.
who she's talking
Who
about,
it is?
or who are you talking
Quite
about?
I mean,
Come on.
multiple people.
There have been people, including myself, but that is on the agenda to discuss later. So,
So
and
I'm
the
trying to
commissioner-
ask, I'm trying to.
And again, it circles back to the
I'm trying to get a
question.
compromise from you to say,
I
can
know.
we move forward with this if I step down?
Like I said,
Please just answer my question. Can we move forward with proc if I step down?
no, because we're still not abiding by our
Well,
bylaws.
you're still beating
So,
around the bush. Tell me
There's,
which
I
one
saw,
is it? This
Victoria,
one?
the
you're
thing is-
presenting one thing's fact. I saw a separate resolution that the commissioners had made
Yes, sir, you did.
that seemed to allow for the different residential distribution. of-
Well, and here's where I can reference that the assembly above us, which is the Board of County Commissioners, when they act outside of their capacity, which is to assign members within our bylaw terms, everything they have assigned is null and void. So their assignment of the members that reside outside.
I hear what you're saying.
So
Is the
when you
county
read-
attorney on hold? Is he ready to opine on this? Otherwise, we should just move forward. You're presenting a legal opinion, but we don't have a county attorney here to
Okay.
represent a separate opinion.
Our opinion and our
I saw a resolution that's
time
arguing something
doesn't
against
matter.
what you said. It was
The
a legally
laws
passed
matter.
resolution. A legally passed resolution certainly matters, and it was recorded. And so I'm gonna say that resolution carries weight, and you're presenting an argument, you may be true. I'm not gonna present a legal argument in opposition to that. I would ask the county attorney to do that. If he's not on hold, then I think we move this thing forward, and this stuff could be taken up in court later.
So who, amongst us, who lives not in.
We'll talk
We'll get
about
into
all
that.
that at the end of this. at the
That's
end
part of our
when we-
discussion.
When we have a discussion
Why
about
don't we have
it.
a
I want to
discussion
figure out how we
first?
move forward. Are you satisfied? Will you make a motion?
How we move forward is, like I said, I'm not knowledgeable of everything. I'm not a lawyer. But the information I do have goes against everything that you guys are telling me. So if you can provide me with legal proof, information that we are abiding by the law, then we can move forward as a legal entity.
Are you-
If we're not abiding by the law,
Are you saying
anything we do here is a
can't-
waste of our
We
time.
can't meet tonight.
I think it's more
Unless
like an
we can-
innocent to proven guilty thing. If you can provide legal information.
I have provided it. If you
that
open
a-
your
an
email right
attorney
now,
can give
you
us
can
information
cite
ahead of this meeting,
anything that
then
I've
fine.
provided.
But in other words, let's move this thing forward, right?
So
Provide
if the
legal
executive board,
information,
here we go.
Get an attorney and get with the county
Victoria,
attorney.
would you
and
let
we can
someone
get
else take
a settlement?
have the floor for just a second? Go ahead, Kate.
Victoria, I think we are at kind of an impasse. We've heard your opinion on whether this meeting should go on tonight. We've heard that you don't feel comfortable acting, or you don't feel ethical with the proceedings to continue based on your assessment of the legal standing. That is not the opinion of everyone in this room. You can make a motion to end tonight's hearing or table it again. You can make a motion to change the order of the agenda, or you can choose to not vote on these matters because you don't feel like you want to be represented in what's happening. But you need to make a motion. You need to
have
make
made
a
a
suggestion.
motion. I
Okay,
have
so
made a
what is
motion.
your,
What's the
My
motion?
What's your
motion is that I have a point of information that I'm looking for. That is a motion. It's a secondary incidental motion. And if you would like me,
but so
we
I
don't
think
have
the chair,
information,
I
then
think
we
the chair
can't
has
continue on
answered your.
legally.
So for us to
This must
accept the
be dealt
motion, we
with.
need a second.
No, you don't. So in
No.
Robert's Rules of Order, this
So
action
how are you,
does not
what are
need
you
a second.
looking, how are you looking to proceed? Are you
How I'm
looking for the
looking-
meeting to end
It's for
tonight?
us to talk honestly about, are we following the laws here?
Well, I saw a resolution that said we were, so.
No, the
Exactly,
Board of
no.
County Commissioners, who are also not lawyers,
I-
and
the-
sent that to Carl,
Point of
and
order,
Carl said,
please,
however.
Point of order.
Thank
I
you.
do have a statement that the county attorney has weighed in. It is on the agenda later, after the procs have their hearing in front of you. But I will read one portion that addresses the membership. It says, CRS 30-28-103 addresses the membership requirements of Planning Commission members. It states, each of such members of the commission shall be a resident of the county. In resolution number 2018 R-025, the Board of County Commissioners directed the PC to ensure that such rules adopted are consistent with 30-28-103. The PC bylaws 5.1 is in part inconsistent with the state statute and inconsistent with the BOCC's directive. Additionally, without dispute, the BOCC has the authority to create a planning commission and appoint members within the limitations of state statute. Again, CRS 30-28-103, 1 and 2. The PC has no authority to adopt bylaws in conflict with state statute and the BOC's direction. Summary. The PC has no authority to limit its own membership to those people who live in unincorporated areas of the Delta County. To the extent that PC bylaws 5.1 limits membership to only those who reside in unincorporated areas of Delta County, it is void since it is outside the authority of the PC and conflicts with state statute. So in the county attorney's words, right here in the memo, then, the state statute rules, meaning that members just need to reside in Delta County, which they do based on 2018 R-025.
So that's the opinion from the county attorney, and we're going, I mean, unless, I think that's the
That's
only
enough.
legal opinion that we have to follow tonight. So that issue is off the table. Can we move forward if I step down as chair?
Forever or just right now for this?
For tonight, and we're still on the agenda to discuss it at the end, right? For the PROC hearing right now.
Okay, so-
Will you accept that?
My biggest question right there was
That
that,
answers the question, Mr. Chair.
It does answer the question, so, I'm trying to address your.
Beyond that,
You're-
yes, for us to be within our
Okay.
bylaws, you must
So I'm going
resign
to resign
as
for this hearing
president.
tonight.
Just
and
for
I'm going to
tonight.
ask the vice chairman to take it on, and then we're going to move on to the PROC hearing.
Thank you.
We'll keep moving forward.
But I would, before we
Thank
like
you.
to continue, I would just like
We're gonna recognize
to,
other people right now.
I know, I just have one
No,
state
You've
statute.
had your time.
We're done.
We're done.
She
We're done.
she said her
Okay.
legal opinion,
You ready?
you're not an
We are
attorney.
not done.
If you
That's-
need
I
to
just
continue
wanna
to disrupt,
state
I'll have you,
that with
I'll ask you
me
to
saying
remove
everything
yourself.
that I've said and sending out the information that I have, Colorado state statute will hold us liable if we are breaking the law because now we are knowledgeable that we are breaking it.
We've received opinion from a certified attorney. You are not that. So please don't keep quoting what Colorado law is
Yes,
going to
I don't
make
have
us
to be an
do.
attorney to read something.
You're not an attorney. That would be practicing law, and that's illegal.
We have
So Jacob,
Point of
move forward.
legal advice.
We're gonna stop, okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Queen, do you have any questions of staff
On the product plan.
on property?
Going back to.
Sorry to call you out.
No, that's fine. Not at this time, I do not.
Thank you.
Cindy?
I do not, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Hardy?
I think I'm gonna pass.
I know.
You mentioned a T intersection. Can you just talk about that a little bit? You're taking your, can you bring the map back up? Where was it, D50 and Tessman meet? That would become a T and a three-way stop? Is that what you're saying? Is that
1600 in Testament.
No,
1600? That's what I'm...
sorry, give it just a second.
So that would, T intersection's there, so just,
So where it says project access location,
yeah, you can return
to
that.
make that a T intersection.
And is that a recommendation from the county engineer, since we have him here?
That's not what it
It
said.
was proposed, it was not necessarily a recommendation. It was
Proposed
just
by the applicant or the engineer?
by staff, I
Okay.
think it was,
And can I ask the engineer if anybody a little bit more information about that? What makes you think that works? I just want a little bit more information.
If you make it a three-way stop, you don't have people just going around that corner. So you're controlling that intersection. It would be a controlled intersection.
People coming out onto Testament as well as people
On
traveling
Testament.
on Testament in
Correct.
both directions.
And the stops would be from D50 Road going south? And
That's,
Tessman
that whole
going,
road is Testament as
east?
it turns south from D.
going west, is that right, Tim?
You would have a stop sign, 3 stop signs, one coming out of Proc, one going west on Testman, and one going south on Testman at that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
So right where the arrow
where the
is,
northeast corner of Proc property, that would be the T intersection.
there you go.
Okay.
Stop that way, stop this way.
And it's come out of the block.
All right,
Yep,
thanks.
thank you.
And I think I want to certainly get you're a traffic engineer today, and for now I just asked staff. Okay, thank you.
Anything?
No.
Tate? Mr. Schrock?
I don't think our engineer or staff have recommended a travel management plan. Is that right?
correct.
But we could do that as a condition.
Good.
I mean, it would address routing, signage for events, things like that. I was struck by staff and the earlier one that we talked about in the email, the 2-year-old event approval that we did for the stand issues, where staff actually addressed signage for events and things like that. And it struck me that a travel management plan that would be kind of laid on top of the events would be a good thing to consider. And there would be routing of traffic, signing of traffic, and things like that. I just want to make sure that we haven't had that recommended, and that we could, in fact, maybe do that ourselves in the approval of this. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, so the question I have is when we're leaving from 1600 Road on this map and going back in the west direction towards the Proc venue, there would be where I see that arrow right now where it says project access, there would be a stop sign there, correct? There would be one as you're coming out of the Proc event, there would be a stop sign there. And then one as you're coming north to south to the event, there would be a stop sign there. So during an event, would it be more advantageous for an individual to be there bringing people in instead of actually every person actually stopping? Or are you proposing that as people come, everybody would come to a three-way stop and make the appropriate turn? Because if you have people coming off of or off of 1600 down Tessman, and everybody has to make a stop, and most likely most of those people are heading into this venue, I anticipate you would see people backing up more versus if you had hypothetically a yield coming down from coming down from 1600 to Tessman, having a yield turn into the left, they would still be hesitating and looking, but you wouldn't be stopping all that traffic. People coming from the north to the south would stop, which would be advantageous because they're going to be making a left-hand turn most likely, or maybe coming straight. And people coming out of Proc would have a stop. They'd be looking down north.
Recording in progress.
And they'd be looking down west. So I would think for easier sight, maybe a yield sign coming into the venue would be more advantageous and safety issue.
I got one question for the engineer. With the stop signs, which I think something along these lines would help for sure. Stop and speed is great. The 7'6" lane, does that fit into this whole deal? Like, are you talking like RVs, pusher RVs coming in here? If there's one sitting there at a stop sign going out on a 7'6" lane and then one coming in, he's gonna take both lanes for sure. I just don't know if I have a problem with the 7'6" lane.
That is one of the standards for a road.
So you're assuming if there's a pusher RV sitting there going out, I'm not hypothetically speaking, it's not gonna happen because they're all gonna come in at one time, probably all go out at the same time.
Correct.
But if there is something parked there on that lane, kind of stop sign going out, and then we got one coming in, you think they got enough room to make that turn? Because if they can't make it on the corner down there on the county road, they're taking both lanes. I don't know if they're gonna make it there. I just think maybe that we ought to look at the lanes a little bit more, at least for a certain section until they get straightened out, maybe like flare it or something, I don't know.
And a follow-up question on that, I mean, there's probably big ag trucks that are coming 50-foot trailers coming out of there too. Swinging that left-hand turn towards 1600 Road would be something that somebody should consider.
And Tate, you're talking about if I was coming from the west to the east to 1600?
Which they'd probably go 348 anyway.
But I'm
right?
just, I think that's what you were
But
saying,
I was
just so I have a
talking
visual,
about that,
okay.
I mean,
So
look at it.
I asked the question because I didn't want to imply that I agree with the stop signs, and I think you pointed out some very good points. I just wanted to get clarification. I think what you're asking is I want to have myself, I want to hear more about that later on after we've heard from the applicant, maybe what they're doing.
Sure.
I'm glad that staff weighed in those questions. They sort of followed me in terms of my thinking. I'm just not, I don't know. I didn't want to imply that the stop signs were good.
Oh, no.
Go ahead, you got to recognize.
One more question in terms of just like how that happens to change that county road, to put in stop signs, make it an intersection, a three-way intersection versus what it is now. What's the cost of that? Who bears the cost of that? How does that get implemented in reality? And is that something that we can condition without like approval from Road and Bridge that that's going to happen?
What do you mean without road and bridge?
Traffic engine. If we're changing stop signs on county roads and not just requiring a stop sign on the private road going onto county road, like what's the how does that happen, I guess?
At a minimum, a traffic count.
Okay.
Which the traffic counts in that area were done in 2020 or 2021, I believe.
And that traffic count would happen before implementation of this project, or it would only happen after the events start going and then county figures out that we need more traffic control there? Like, I guess, how do we,
You could do another traffic count, but the one was done is not that old.
Mhm.
I don't think that the traffic has increased that much on that area.
I guess the question is,
So-
can we just put one?
Yeah.
Need to
regardless
travel that
of the
road.
counts, or does it have
Yeah.
to meet thresholds?
That would go before the commissioners.
okay.
They're the final say on that. I would do the traffic study. I could do a traffic count and make a recommendation to the board, but they would be the final decision.
I think that was one of the concerns of many of the neighbors was
Absolutely.
when that traffic count was maybe done, and I appreciate you think it was 20 or 21?
Yeah.
Because I know that
Larry
was a
Record
concern of
still
when that was, you know, when
forming
that was done.
happened.
Is there certain
What
months
what
that
was
it
the
happens?
specific concern? What was the specific concern about that?
Wasn't a concern, I was just wondering, I had heard at our last meeting about how some of the neighboring residents were talking about the traffic, and I was just wondering when that, I was appreciative that he gave us a traffic date, like he thought it was 20 or 21, is that right?
Yeah,
It was done.
Larry Record was still here and he retired in
21, he did, okay, thank you.
Do we know what time of the year during that year it was taken?
I don't know off the top of my head. I could look into it, but
Oh, I bet it
I
varies
bet
a
it
lot.
does.
Oh, yeah.
When would peak time
I would say
Late
summer, harvest time.
That'd be something to look at.
Yeah, definitely.
They were hauling corn today.
When I mentioned the travel management plan, I sort of had in mind of actually us conditioning a route for ingress, egress to the site. And I've been thinking about Highway 345 as a major access from Delta to the site.
348.
348, sorry. As an alternative to what I'm hearing the problem of Testament at 1600 road is. So there would be a condition, a route, saying, here's your approval, but you gotta use this traffic route, and then kind of advertising
So
of
you're
this.
putting all the traffic on.
Could we hear from that?
I was gonna say, Mr. Chair, I mean, you're in the period of asking questions of staff versus deliberation. And we
Right.
still haven't heard from the applicant or their traffic engineer.
Right.
So,
Oh, yeah, we're in the details about stop signs at an intersection. I thought I would add this as an alternative to that.
Keep some language in your head. If there's are there any other questions of staff? No, we'll hear from the applicants and or their engineer at this time. If you have anything else to add, or if you just want to field questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably just field questions. I think I turn it over to Skip and let, he's an engineer and an expert in that traffic field, and I think that it's important that we look at how much usage is on that road, and if we're looking at an event that's, potentially one day a week, how much traffic's actually on it. So I'd rather refer to him and let him address those questions.
Sure.
Brenda, could you go first and explain your conversations yesterday?
Okay. So my name is Brenda Brown. I work for the Procs. I've been with them for about 4 years. And we decided to do this event. We've been doing party rentals and such for several years. I have been a wedding planner for almost 30 years now. So this is just not something new to me. I've lived in Delta all my life. And I've been to many venues in Delta County and have traveled all the roads. And none of them are really that wonderful to be traveling on when people are drinking anyway. And there's S&K event centers, there's P. Green Hall out past a little ways. There's this new one just right up by where we are planning ours. Yeah, it's a little smaller than what we are doing, but there is one there as well. So that being said, when we decided to do this event venue, I guess is what you want to call it, we had come up with certain numbers. Like I said, I've done weddings forever, and my weddings usually consist of 100 to 150 guests, and that's usually tops. Out of the almost 30 years I've been doing this, I've had 2 weddings that have been 300 guests. So that number, the 400 number, I'm sure sticking with everyone's head, thinking, okay, that's too many people on that road. That is not going to happen, especially every weekend. That would be wonderful if it did, but it's not going to. So 100 to 150 guests is what we are looking at. per event. Yes, we are going to have a few extras every once in a while, and that is, I have spoke to the board members of the hospital, and they just had a gala a couple months ago that I did, and that was a little over 300 guests. They are wanting to do the next gala at our venue if it's able to be done, because they can provide a bigger area for more people. So maybe 1 or 2 events per year would be a little over that 150, but that's it. So as all of the neighbors here, we are not going to have that many people driving up and down that road always. And it is a weekly, or maybe not even a weekly per month. I mean, I'm hoping to have at least 2 or 3 events per month, but who knows? We'll have to just see what happens. But it's not going to be that many people on that road at all times. And, you know, at a wedding, not everyone goes to these weddings at the same exact time. They're going to be trickling in and out, coming in, you know, who knows what time. And we have talked, Zach and I and Jen have talked, and we are going to not hold it open more than midnight. We have talked about that. And even at midnight, we will definitely just close everything down. They could come back the next morning to clean up, so there will not be people out on the road at 1:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just wanted to make that clear to everyone, so that you know that what we are planning on doing, and this is not something that we are new at. We've been doing it for many years, but it just hasn't been our own venue. It's been other venues that we've been providing our product to, okay? So if you have any questions, just let us know.
You talked with the sheriff?
And I did talk to the sheriff yesterday. We had, I had received an email Monday morning when I got to work in regards to some comments and concerns that he was aware of from some of the neighbors because of traffic and late night parties, the alcohol. And so he was not very happy. But when I went in and met with him, when he heard my side of the story and what we were going to be doing, and not necessarily all the stories that he had heard, he was much better. And he was okay with things at that point in time. And he understood more so because he did not know what was happening. Supposedly, he didn't even know that there was going to be an event center built out there. So that being said, once I sat and talked to him and explained to him what we were going to be doing, then he was much better. And he approved and thinks that it will be fine. And he knows that, you know, the road has been the same way for years. And like I said, there's been events all over Delta. And none of the roads are very good in different directions that you go. But it's just how you do things. And we're building an event center that is going to be good for Delta and hopefully bring in money to the community. So it's not like we are just trying to cause conflict or troubles with any of the neighbors. We are trying to work with everyone as best as we can and do what we have to do to make this right, and not just be another pain in everyone's side. So I hope everyone now can understand that it's not going to be the 400 people every single weekend and traveling on those roads, okay? Thank you.
Can you sit here? Just put my stuff on. Good evening, Commission. My name is Steve Wilson. I live at, my address is P.O. Box 629, Mesa, Colorado. A little bit about me and my background, and I don't say this to brag. Some of the numbers actually scare me because I just calculated it. But I'd like you to consider me a resource for all your traffic and transportation planning questions. But this is the scary part. I've been doing this for 39 years. And I didn't realize it had been that long. Along that time, I spent 2 years with the Federal Highway Administration as the state traffic and safety engineer for Utah. I spent 3 years working for CDOT here in Region 3 out of Grand Junction. and the rest of the time has been consulting like a handful of the procs here. So, in terms of event centers, I've studied existing event centers where a lot of the information that I used in this study came from, and studied event venues all the way up to major league ballparks. So, like I said, I'm here as a resource and I'm happy to answer your questions. Could I start with some of the things that were just talked about?
Please.
All right. So, travel management plan. I've done those for bigger venues when there's multiple routes. It could be done here, and information to travelers like signs are an important aspect of that. So a travel management plan could be done. One of my cautions, though, is the discussion kind of evolved into mandated routes. This is your mandated route. Everybody's got one. They put in the address and it takes them there. The thing about traffic engineering, a couple things. Number one, everybody's a traffic engineer because they all drive. The second thing is I'm not dealing with molecules or predictable things. We're dealing with human behavior. And that throws a wild card into things like mandated routes. We went into this with gravel pits, and I apologize I couldn't be here the last meeting, but I was in a Montrose County public hearing for a gravel pit. You probably read about that one in the paper. It's been a lot of fun, but the same things are coming up with mandated routes now. The gravel pit, they can control the trucks because the operator is running them. There's fines and stuff if they don't follow it. But for people coming to a place, they're gonna do what's in their phone. They're gonna follow that.
A quick question on that, wouldn't it just force all the traffic onto one route instead of dispersing it over multiple routes to really lessen the impact? I mean, lessening the impact would not be mandating a route because it's dispersed.
You're dispersing it through the grid system versus putting it on one. So, you are condensing the impacts.
Right, so if we're looking to lessen the impacts, then we wouldn't want to.
When you start talking about like neighbors with 900 cars going out in the dingleys too, versus heading back to the highway.
Yeah, and I do want to help quantify the volumes on the existing road and the proposed volumes, so you guys have a perspective on what those are. But yeah, I mean.
What's the volume?
Traffic volumes.
Volume.
Sorry. Yeah. So in terms of, there was a lot of discussion about the axis itself to Testament at the 90-degree curve. We want this to be safe. We want this to work. I mean, it's not to our advantage to have an entrance to an event center where people feel like they're in danger. So we're motivated to do the right thing. And there's a whole bunch of options that can be done in terms of traffic control at that location. It starts from temporary traffic control, which is actually called uniform traffic control, where you have a certified flagger or an off-duty enforcement officer standing out there and manually controlling traffic as it comes in and out. Obviously, that would only be done during events, and the recommendation would only be done, if that was going to be an approach, that would only be done for the hour before the event starts. And I'll really slide the case show that we'll pull up in a minute and talk about. So that's not a permanent thing. It's, we're talking 35 events a year. So, basically 10% of the days of the year will be an event. So, like Brenda said, it's not 100% of the time when this is happening. So, the lowest level of implementation will be that uniform traffic control, which could be done. And I'm not sure that any decisions have been made or recommendations from anybody. I think there's just been discussion about different options. The other option is to realign that access road so it ties into the 90-degree curve. I don't want to say perpendicular because it's a curve, but radially to the curve. And then that could be stop control. It's actually a desirable configuration to do that because they've got great sight distance, because they come into that and they can look north all the way up, they can look east all the way along Testament both those ways. And my diagram that showed the project access. And it was a little confusing when I saw it because it's labels on the inside of the curve. But the axis, as you've seen, is actually on the outside of the curve. So, that's pretty standard. You have a driveway coming onto a road, you have a stop sign at it. So that would be the next level. The third level would be what's called an all-way stop control, in this case, three-way stop control. That is by far the safest option, because everybody's got to stop and look at each other and make a decision. Some of the comments we heard from the sheriff about, 90-degree curve, people running off the road, people driving in ditches. One way to address that perhaps is to stop people at that location and have everybody look around. There is a federal document that controls traffic control devices called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And they have criteria in there for when you can do certain traffic control at intersections. And one of them is, traffic signals have to meet tests. But if you're going to do an always stop control, there's also criteria for that. And it's based on a certain amount of volume. It's usually higher volumes, usually much higher volumes than you can see on Testament Road right now. So I could do that study, but I can tell you what the results are going to be. It wouldn't be warranted for that federal document. But, Delta County can choose that option if they like. And it's just, there's a federal recommending thing that's out there. Who makes access intersection changes, whether it's putting the stop signs? A lot of my experiences with CDOT, and CDOT's pretty clear on this. If there's stuff that needs to be done, mitigation for traffic impacts, then the applicant does them. And they just don't do them on their own. In the CDOT process, there's a traffic study, there's a concept that's recommended, and then there's a set of construction plans that are prepared. In this case, it'd be pretty simple. And then those plans are reviewed and approved by the county engineer to make sure he's comfortable with what's going on. And then the applicant would install those. Or perhaps, the applicant would provide some money and the county forces would install it. There's different ways that, I'm not sure how the county engineer does it, but typically those mitigations are paid for by the applicant. In some cases, constructed by the applicant and approved by the county. Let's talk about traffic counts for a minute. The county does do traffic counts, and the county engineer provided those to me. And it showed on Testament Road, I don't know the exact date of those counts.
There is not an exact day, it's only by year.
Yeah, it's only by year, but almost all traffic counts by local agencies are done in the summer. So that would put it more in the peak time than right now.
It's more realistic.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe the number was 506 or
503. I have it up on my computer, so.
Okay. Yeah, it was 503 on Testament Road, just to the west of 1600 Road, and then it drops down as you continue further west. It gets down to like 253, and these are vehicles per day. These are daily traffic volumes, and the volumes on 1600 Road, quite a bit to the south, down by B Road, was about 1,600 vehicles a day. So I will tell you that there is a national guideline. There's actually design documents, design guidance for what's called low-volume roads. And the threshold for a low-volume road is 500 vehicles a day. So Testament Road is 3 vehicles over the low-volume road criteria. So it's from my perspective, working on interstates and a bunch of other stuff, this is about as low volume as roads get. All right, so I've gone through the things that were talked about today. I'm happy to answer or entertain any other questions.
Great. Steve?
No, I'm sure we'll come back to it. Signage, I think, is maybe a really important issue for us.
Talk about destination signage, like event center this way type stuff.
Yeah. And I still think that routing, particularly maybe in terms of their advertisement, say here's the preferred routes of getting to this event center, and on the website, maybe something that we want to help them encourage them to do. And I agree that dispersal of traffic is always good, but, and I'm not sure that Highway 348's that spectacularly better than 1600 Road, but it is more of a central access from Central Delta out there with signage on Highway 348 going east on D Road. It may give some of the neighbors some alleviation of that traffic off 1600 to Testament, if that kind of routing was done in advertising.
So
that's all I'm thinking about.
So Brenda, in your experience with events in this area, what's your estimate on where people are coming from and going to in general?
That there, it depends too, because they could be coming from the Montrose area or, Grand Junction area, and they come from Grand Junction, they're going to probably go to the highway till you hit that stop sign and come up 1600 Road. That's just the more logical way to go. But, yeah, everyone's going to take their own way. There's some that like to go the back roads, so they will come through 348. It just depends on how long they've lived in the area and what roads they know. Because they're going to take the road that is the easiest for them.
So for wedding events, there could be more of a regional draw, people coming from other places with airports, for example.
Correct.
But if you're doing, a hospital event, there'd probably be more local people that know the roads and they know how they want to get there.
Correct.
So the other thing is, it would be possible to stipulate that in certain advertising or contracts, that the event center provide travel information.
Most preferred route or something like that.
Yeah, things like that.
I
Because
think, Steve, that's what you're talking about, is instead of everybody having kind of the same route, is that they would have maybe different preferred routes based on where those individuals might be coming from? Is that what you're thinking?
They're actually going to do that, though. They're coming out of Montrose or wherever, they're going to...
Well, if they're coming out of Montrose, they probably want to turn 16, however it comes into Highway 50, I don't know.
Well, if they're coming in from Olathe side, they're probably going to hit 5500, coming to 1600 down to Testament, I would guess.
Yeah,
Right?
I think it goes against, we're dictating to.
Where they should be driving,
specifics
I think
on-
it should be, yeah. it's
People are
not a-
gonna use their phones and get there however, and it's
Well,
gonna be.
I mean,
more natural.
all I'm talking about now is advertising, really. And,
Right.
what we would encourage them to do to promote the advertising.
Okay.
And on their website, for example, here's the best way to get there.
Well, it might be a good time to quantify and talk about the amount of project traffic. Kate, could you bring up that? She's way ahead.
There you go.
So, like I said before, this data comes from actual event centers that we've counted the traffic in and out over the whole period before and after, in terms of some of the percentages and things that I've done. Let me get my copy so you guys can look at that. All right, so, this assumes a 5 p.m. start. Events are going to change, so it's all kind of relative, but just assuming a 5 p.m. event start. And you know this because we've all been to these events before, but everybody comes to the event in the hour before it starts. Not the wedding party and stuff like that. They're there and they've been there. In this case, they might be staying on site. So, the attendees come in the hour before. So, we've got assumed time prior to 4 p.m. We've got 12 vehicles for the wedding party, caterers, bride, groom, employees, all that stuff. They trickle in, maybe the day before or earlier that day. This would be on a Saturday most likely. We've got from 4 to 5 p.m. the guests arrive. So, I've got 160 maximum vehicles there. So how did I come up with that? The Federal Highway Administration has published a book called Managing Special Events. It gets into travel plans and travel routes and stuff like that. Their research has showed for these kind of events that there's an average of 2.5 people per car. So it's simply the max, like Brenda said, we want approval to do the rare but higher volume thing that's being proposed, and that's that 400 vehicles. So 400 divided by 2.5 gets us 160 vehicles. time to
Okay,
take a
we
breath.
believe you, we believe you.
The studies that I've done actually showed more than that. Showed like 3 people per vehicle for these kind of events. Because families come and they stay in a hotel or something.
You want to do a little drinking, pile about 5 of them in there, you know, one back home.
And then hopefully a designated driver. But Brenda, one thing we didn't talk about was, talk about the bartenders that work at your event. Are they professional bartenders that?
They will be, and they will all, and people that are managing the place will all have to go through some kind of training for that as well. And we will have management on site throughout the whole period of the event. There will always be someone there. And I am going to push even security. I've done tons of weddings at the Delta Elks here, and they make you have a security guard there if you're going to do an event, and that is something I will be putting in the contract as well. So it's not going to be, it's not like we don't know what we're doing. I mean, this is something I've been doing for many, many years, and
It'd be the same level of care at a
Correct.
drinking establishment.
exactly.
Steve, did you have did this answer any, actually I didn't hear a question. Do you have any other questions?
Well, just one last thing. To translate 160 vehicles an hour into arrival headway is what it's called. On average, if they spread out over this hour, we're talking about 1 car every 22 seconds. No, yeah, every 22 seconds. So just less than 3 cars per minute. Some may clump up, others will spread out, but on average, it's about 22 seconds between vehicles. So we've got a low volume road that's really at a low, there's way more capacity on the road that's being used now, and then every 20 to 25 seconds, another project-related vehicle is going to come. So I'm sorry, is there more?
No, I think I would like to hear from Mr. Prock about all this tools advertising, but you've done a good job kind of explaining things. Appreciate it.
My only question is, traffic's pretty frequent, right? These events, this is happening highly with a lot of variability. So somebody might be experience a little bit of traffic between 4 or 5 p.m. on a Saturday night. But this isn't a nightly occurrence. Like it's I don't know how much we're blowing this traffic deal out of the water. It's just to fuse cars for an hour, and there might be a 5-minute delay or something, right? This isn't, to me, that doesn't seem like a huge impact outside that 1 hour, maybe 2 hours a week. Am I looking at that right?
Yeah, 1 hour, 35 times a year.
35 times a
We're
year.
talking about
so, yeah.
35 hours per year
Right.
of inbound traffic. And the other part of this chart is that, as we all know, people disperse more randomly after the formal ceremony.
Sure. Another question would be, how much we're talking adding 160 vehicle trips in 1 hour is the max, and that type of road can handle how many total vehicle trips?
Well, the capacity on a 2-lane rural road varies on what we call level of service, which is a test score like A through F. And the AASHTO, the federal document that governs roadway design says that level of service D, as in dog, is the acceptable limit for these kind of roads. And it's in the traffic study. It's a study from Florida that looked at a bunch of different roads, but the two-way capacity on both 1600 and Tessman is 1,350 vehicles per hour.
Yeah, so we're taking about 60 or 50 per hour on average, 500 a day, at 160 for 1 hour. There's tons of capacity left.
Tons of capacity.
That's the only question.
Yeah, in fact, I did some calculations, and we talk in terms of volume to capacity. So it's like your glass of water. If it's halfway full with water, then the volume to capacity ratio is 0.5. The volume to capacity ratio right now on Tessman Road is 4. We've used up 4% of the capacity with the existing volume. When we add project traffic to it, that goes up to 16%. So we're still not even using 20% of the road capacity at the peak time.
Only for 1 hour a week.
1 hour
Yeah.
every
That's the
week and a
big-
half.
Every 1 point.
That's the big kicker for me, it's just like 1 hour, so I don't wanna like impede the traffic 7 days a week, everybody's gotta drive by there, stop.
And that's the
Fall
problem
for
with
an hour.
permanent
Right, Maybe
installation.
if it's like a flashing light, when we're having a shindig, then we stop them, but other than that, all through the week, people just keep on doing their thing, and it's not impacting society. So, I don't know.
Tom?
Skip, really good presentation, got just a couple questions. We keep focusing on 35 events a year, but I have not heard anybody talk about restricting it to 35, so the answer is they can do 50, 100, they can do 300. Would it change your approach to this if it was 50 or 100 events a year? Would you feel differently?
Well, that's interesting that you say that because every one I've always done always has a restriction on the number of events per year. So I've never been asked that question before.
So I guess maybe rephrase it. Should we consider restricting the number of events?
Well, that's up to you, but I will say that if we consider this like a business, just a daily business, the numbers that I'm saying are still true. The counts that the county did were probably on a weekday because we collect data on average weekdays. I don't know how the Saturday afternoon traffic compares to the counts the county did, but it's the same numbers that would just happen more often, and the numbers I'm seeing are so low that I don't see any major traffic operations issues. So there's no traffic reason to restrict the number of events.
Okay. And you mentioned the uniform traffic control, sort of a manual person out there doing it. You didn't say that was the safest, but would that be the most effective? Well, so again, should we be conditioning this application and approval on the applicant having some type of uniform traffic control for their events? Is that going to be the safest, or will that be safe and the most expeditious for all the traffic, even if it's once a week or twice a week or whatever for the events? Assuming they're doing 100 to 200 people. I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out how do we make this function at the safest level for the residents and the rest of the traffic? Because I hear there's a lot of conversation about how everybody's going to leave, but 160 cars getting in, you couldn't, all in within an hour, wouldn't fit on Testman Road. They'd be out onto the 1600 road in both directions, whether they're coming from Montrose or Grand Junction. They all have to be on 1600 road in Testman. 160 cars. If I live further in, and I just made it up thinking one every 10 seconds, that would take 6 minutes, just to get through the many cars. You said it was once every 22 seconds. That if I'm waiting to get in, that would take me an hour almost to get in. How do we make that function efficiently, even if it is only 1 hour a week?
Maybe I wasn't clear on how I described that one event vehicle every 22 seconds on average. So I'm going to do the math to see what the existing traffic would be. So generally we see 10%, the peak hour traffic equals 10% of the daily traffic. So we have 500 per day times 0.1 equals 5. So 50. So we got 50. So we've got one vehicle on Testman every minute, and we've got one event vehicle every 22 seconds. So there's very little, there's lots of gaps in those traffic. So I don't see people stopping out on Testman Road waiting to cross and make the turn, because they're going to see a vehicle every 1 minute. So 3 event vehicles can turn for every one vehicle coming at them on Testman.
So maybe address, if there is an issue with traffic, will the uniform traffic control be the best way to manage this?
Well, what I would recommend is we don't know what we don't know, and we can speculate, and I can do calculations, and we can use our experience and guess. But typically, when this comes up, if there's a concern about something, it's a condition of approval that says, if traffic and safety problems arise, then you should resolve it. And you could specify with uniform traffic control or other methods as approved by the county engineer. You can make that a condition of approval that if something does happen, you've got that ability to implement it.
I'm aware of that. I'm just trying to
About what
get
metric, though?
more input from you on the value of having a uniform traffic control versus stop signs or nothing.
Well, when you make these decisions, there's a bunch of criteria, and you brought up a good point about, for 35 hours a week, do we want to affect all the other drivers the rest of the time? So that's the disadvantage of like a three-way stop out there. The uniform traffic control, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see any traffic issues, delay, or queuing of vehicles anywhere. So I'm not sure why we're trying to solve a problem that I don't think is going to happen.
Okay,
Can I ask you a question?
Can I finish?
Yeah, sir.
One more. and I'll let you do it. Did you model a second entrance point for this venue at all on any of your analysis? Because, there was a conversation that we had last time about trying to get a second access point on the south side with the church or Mr. Good or something like that. I just want to know, did you look at that in any of your analysis?
Well, it's interesting because when I did this letter 2 times, and the first time I didn't address the emergency access, but it came out of comments, and I did address it to some degree, but my focus was really more on what the fire department or fire experts were saying, and also county code about what does the main access need to be to accommodate this and get two-way travel. If people are coming out, can an emergency vehicle get in at the same time, and things like that. It is a public safety issue to have emergency access, so it's important. That typically isn't covered in a traffic study, so I haven't analyzed the second access point. My understanding that if I'm looking at the daily operations of the event, an emergency access would be just that. It would, hopefully it never needs to be used, but it would be there. And if that happened, then there'd be all kinds of enforcement people around to direct traffic, out. So I did not, the answer is no, I did not study because it wouldn't be used in the operational part that I looked at.
Okay.
You're going to propose an engineered traffic plan, correct, in this next stage of this application process, if there isn't a reason to? And you would propose that with the county engineer and they would okay it. So do we need to get into the details of where stop signs should go? Isn't that something that the traffic engineer would propose as the best method?
Yeah, the planning commission could simply say, condition of approval is work with the county engineer to identify mutually acceptable traffic control configuration at the intersection.
And we don't necessarily have to try to dictate all this at this point. You're the expert, you're the expert, you guys can agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I have to ask. Thanks.
Katie?
No, thanks for your presentation. It was clarifying.
Kate, can we pull up a map so we can see that thing?
Want to see the access intersection?
Yeah, that one right there. So, obviously, we're going to come out on 1600 Road. That's where most of this traffic is going to come. I feel like, obviously, a stop sign coming out of the event is needed, but I've came full circle. I don't think we need to affect the traffic all day, every day. If they're in agreement to maybe putting a flagger out there, I think it would help just on an event. I think that's the way I would go. The question is, there's another wedding venue there. Do you know anything about that? Right close to you there?
Uh-huh.
What kind of people are, they throw a shindig, same time you're gonna throw a shindig, right?
Yeah, but hers is 35 max. It's
30?
Because she's in a subdivision.
I hear you.
Mhm.
So it's 35, and that's
Correct.
pretty well followed, or do you know that?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a subdivision, it's in a home, and it's just a small.
And where does it come out? Where's
It's
that
right off of
subdivision?
1600 Road, a little further.
That way?
Yeah, it's
So is this
probably
the
about
southern
entrance
of Dry Creek?
Farther down, Brenda.
down further.
Down, right there.
So basically, whatever she's putting in is gonna hit this about the same time. Does she shut down, and give or take, around when you're
She
shutting
shuts down at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, so that's good, you separate it.
Correct.
All right, that was that question. Yeah, that's about it. That's kind of what I'm doing. Thank you.
Cindy?
I am fine. Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
Yeah. Mr. Green?
So, this may be a little bit outside of your area of focus with your profession, but on the entrance to the proposed property, do you feel that it is adequate, given the volume of traffic and the size of vehicles to be coming in and out of that access? It seems fairly narrow to me.
We had an image that showed the intersection in, I think, a picture, or maybe a zoom of an aerial or something. Or maybe the one with the irrigation. Yeah, right down there. All right. This image on the bottom is, I think, the best picture we have here. So, you know, technically there's two access points that come together here. This is the access to Tessman, and I'm not sure about this one. Is this?
That's the driveway, and that's the neighbors. This is Testament.
The Testament's the corner.
Right, Testman's here, but this is your access.
No, mine is the lower one. And this, the other one is the neighbor. So we're going west.
Going up on that hill.
North is to your right.
This isn't you?
Nope. Nope.
The other one.
Okay.
There you go.
Need a bigger road.
Yeah, well, yeah, so we've got two, technically what is happening is we've got one intersection here of these two that come together and go out and tie to another intersection here. So there's two intersections side by side. So it'd be desirable to have the access come in, like I said, radial like this with a stop sign here. So I don't know if there's any way to realign this so that it comes in and both these come in like that. But that would be the configuration that would be closest to what's out there now.
And we would do a widened corner right there. I already met with a guy that drives a fire truck and does all the emergency stuff. He said that corner as is, now he has no problems with taking his ladder truck in there as is. But we would widen that area, you know, to where this is nice and easy to turn in here. There's lots of access. So we just widen this a little bit and then come down to a 20-foot wide.
And that's what I'm talking about. So coming out, you know, radially from the curve and then tying back into this.
Right.
So that'd be part of that access plan that I'm talking about, or access, yeah, the site plan, access plan.
Right.
Put together, give it to the county engineer.
Exactly.
So you're thinking 20 feet instead of 7.6 twice, or 6.1?
20 foot is what I agreed to, Hardy.
You're going for 20? I know.
So coming in with a camper or coming out with a camper, having it widened like that would give you that nice radius to pull right up on the road or pull into the property, is what I'm seeing by your presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all slow travel speed, low travel speed.
Sure.
And you know, it's like, you know, two ag vehicles meet on a county road, they figure it out.
Yeah.
So when you get that rare thing where there might be campers or large vehicles in there, one would stop and wave the other one on, or
Right.
whatever it is.
Okay.
When talking about the volume of traffic, it appears very favorable when we assume that this is going to be neatly and evenly spaced over 60 minutes.
Right.
I think that's probably not going to be very realistic in the fact that I think that window of when the majority of participants are going to arrive is going to be shortened to a quite narrower window. Would you agree with that?
Well, we've seen them dispersed, but there is a certain amount of queuing, you know. We've all been there, there's a slow driver and other people want to go faster, so there might be groups or queues or platoons, I should say, of more than one vehicle, and they're not spaced out, they're all right there. So I agree with you that when I say an average of 22, it's probably not going to happen like that. There's probably going to be a few that come in, then a longer gap, maybe a minute or two, and then a few more that come in. But the background traffic is very consistent. That you know, the 500 vehicles a day or 50 an hour, you know, they're just traveling randomly. So the gap where people could make a left turn off Tessman, that would be more consistent. And we're still talking about more than a minute between those competing, conflicting vehicles. So event traffic will clump up to some degree, but I don't think the background traffic will.
Okay. One question for staff. Kate, did we ever receive a response from Delta County Road and Bridge on any comment?
Not Rockbridge specifically, no.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Victoria?
No questions at this time.
Okay. The other question I had, I went up there today and you talked about, the quote mandated route, which is our phones. My phone tried to send me up Old Testament, which has that barricade on it. Could we, without talking to Google, can we do anything about that?
That's about it. I've had to do that at my private residence. I live in the Twilight Zone because my road, there's Golden Drive and I'm on East Golden Drive. And none of the programs recognize my address or the mapping, so I've actually had to petition Apple and Google to do that. And
Did it work?
I haven't checked. The Apple, I've got an iPhone and the iPhone works okay. I think it was more the Google map. But there is a formal way, if you just Google, notifying of road changes or something.
Can I say something for that?
Sure.
If you've been to a wedding, most people that do weddings, they put balloons like all the way down the road to the event. So, and every one that I have been to, they've done that. They've put signs from the highway, and as you drive up a little bit further, they'll put balloons there or some kind of signage. That is usually done almost at every event that I've ever been at.
You bring up a good point, because the mapping is not always accurate.
Is there any other questions of staff and or applicant before we go to public comment? Mr. Shaw.
I'd like to explore the fire suppression a little bit more. I thought we didn't get very far on that, had questions about it with respect to fire hydrants and things, and now I see this price for a fire hydrant looks like a lot. But I'm not quite satisfied, Mr. Brock, with your, as you talked about it last time, we'd rather lose a building than lose people, and I understand that. But I still want to try to make sure that we have some sort of understanding of fire suppression in the building. If I understand it, in a commercial kitchen, you're going to have a fire suppression requirement on a stove under public health laws. Is that right?
Yeah, if you had a fire or a gas stove, you would have to have the whatever type of hood that they would require.
Doesn't the restaurant guy with our health department say when you're putting in a commercial kitchen, you've got to have an automatic fire suppressor over your stove?
It depends on what kind of stove it is, and we're not required to put one of those stoves in this particular building, but you're right, if you're just asking about a stove and you gotta put it in a restaurant, there are certain regulations that go along with that.
Well, I thought there was, and that's obviously one of the big issues of a restaurant, commercial kitchen kind of things, that a fire could start.
Big fire extinguisher with those big alarms.
Yeah, I thought they were required.
Well, and this kitchen is going to be, it's going to be catering. We're not going to be cooking per se in this kitchen. We're going to have caterers that will be coming and bringing there, and that will have warming ovens and such for them.
I thought we heard commercial kitchen.
We said we'd set it up to where we could try to do it both, but if there, whatever regulation is involved with that particular stove, and if that's required by health department to have an extinguishing hood, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, I heard commercial kitchen. That's where I was coming from. And that helped me understand a little bit. There would be some fire suppression in the building.
Yeah, there will be.
But I also had the question, and maybe Todd can help, given he's a fire guy, about internal fire suppression. I would grant you that a fire hydrant extended to the property is an expensive proposition. but maybe internal fire suppression through other kinds of means of fire extinguishing systems that could be built in there that may be water but may not be water, and whether or not in your own building design you could think of that.
So with the current fire code that is like in Montrose County, if Delta had one, which they don't have one, so I ran this all through my architect, which is Monda Architecture. And I sent that information to Kate as well. He did a design review and went through it and said, basically, hey, if you've got this many exterior doors, you got this many ways to get people out of there, then by code, you are not required to have fire suppression. So that's what we did. We ran that through that architectural analysis, had him do a code review on it, make sure that we had enough exits and everything was good to get everybody out of there. When, I think overall, when we're dealing with a volunteer fire department, you know, our structure is always at safety a little bit. And if Delta's gonna make some major changes, then I think that we'll probably save more buildings. But in the meantime, what we're worried about is that safety. And so we did do that design by an architect to make sure that everybody can get out of the building and do that well.
So you're saying if we had a code, it wouldn't even require it?
That's correct.
Did you say Phil Motley?
Yes.
Sorry, he was the architect who reviewed the fire safety
Yeah.
egress situation.
Yes.
Are you done?
Yeah, I guess I'm not altogether comfortable with that, but, because I still think,
If you had a
big
code-
doors or not, you know, if something can happen wrong, it's likely to happen wrong, and that's in a venue with people and all kinds of things. But
Is this all one story? One level?
Yeah, it's got like a little mezzanine on the top so you could look over the edge, but pretty much it's
Not a
all
lot
one
of
floor.
people, yeah.
Can you at least give us some assurance that there would be fire extinguishers inside?
Of course.
the building?
Definitely, at all exits, yes, of course.
You okay, Steve?
So I'm following up, the suppression's one thing, but as far as an escape plan, I mean, this thing's got, I don't see enough doors on this thing, and there's no code, so we shouldn't necessarily be requiring it, but you've designed your bathrooms to ADA standards, so I think that it's reasonable, you know, we have to approve, you know, recommend approval based on health, safety, welfare, that there are enough exits. I see one 6-foot door and a 20-foot sliding glass door that's probably closed in the wintertime. Those things are heavy, and I don't see anything else. So I think the plans, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing some sort of certification by this person who's done, you know, that shows that this lives up to a certain code as far as fire safety is concerned. Not building code, nothing like that. I'm not talking suppression, but I don't see a lot of doors on this thing.
Well, I mean, I had an architect look at it. It's, I mean, based on fire code, it is up to code if we had a code. It does have a fair number of
So
exits.
we could condition, you know, that you provide that sort of documentation.
Sure.
And then my only other question, the hotel rooms, are they open if there's no events? Is the hotel rooms open all the time?
We just set it up basically as like a VRBO. If I had a VRBO in one of the neighboring subdivisions, I could run that VRBO when I wanted to run it. I assume that same thing would be fine on this property.
So neighbor wants, they got family coming to town, they just want to rent it out, they're, you know, just not a
Sure.
family, so could provide a little bit of an asset there. That's all.
Tom?
Let me just, so the VRBO, you're not tying the rental of those rooms or the RV spaces to the events? You want to be able to rent them to anybody at any time?
I would like to be able to do that. I think that would be the same standard as everybody else around me.
Okay, and we heard from a lot of the neighbors the last time. I'm just curious to know, did you have any additional conversations with neighbors that we should be aware of, that maybe you're making some changes based on some of their concerns?
Yeah, we talked to a lot of the neighbors that were, you know, our adjacent neighbor in Snafflebit. You know, they were all here at the beginning of this meeting, and then didn't make it through the whole thing. But I think we have a lot of support in that subdivision now. We agreed to, shut everything down at midnight. That was their main request, and they said that as long as we were doing that basically they didn't have any other problems with it.
And as I remember looking at that map where it says east, down at the bottom, is there a residence right there?
There is one that sits back in here.
That'd be across the street.
Yes.
Right? What about on the other side, same side as your entrance? Isn't
There is one right on the corner, yes.
you think there's any need for screening between them and you? I mean, you've got all your cars coming down there, even if it's midnight, you got somebody's bedroom there.
Well, I think the natural corner of Tessman shines their headlights in that particular house every time I go on the county road. Our road would parallel their house, and then there's a pretty big berm there as well. The staff took a picture of. I don't think there's much of a reason there. He's got a fence there as well. If something comes up and we need to screen it, I don't want to cause anybody any problems, but we can do that. It's a little bit difficult to do in that access with Uncut Valley water users because all of that is an access.
And the berm is part of Uncut Waters. It's not your berm, right? I mean, they
No.
could take it away.
They could, but the ditch wouldn't be very effective without it.
That was all.
Anything else?
Kate, did you receive any comment from Delta County Fire Protection District 1? Yeah. So it was my understanding that you will. And then there's another entity that we're waiting on comment from that pertains to fire protection. Is that correct?
I mean, based on our conversation with Delta County Emergency Management, we reached out to state to see if there's any state regulations since we don't have fire codes, but I haven't heard back from them as of yet.
I know the NFPA has regulations, which I believe that's what the city of Delta has adopted. That has a requirement of a fire hydrant being within 400 feet of large occupancy buildings, and based on occupancy, having a fire suppression system installed in the building. Both of which take very large volumes of water. And the fire suppression sprinklers, it seems like they're putting out a little bit of water. It is a tremendous draw on that infrastructure to be able to provide that. And I at least think that's something that should be considered.
So if we can't get a fire hydrant there, how would they support that with, could it be done from a pond and pumped?
It can, and there's ways to calculate volume requirements. I know in some of the more remote subdivisions and things like that, like in Log Hill or up in Ridgeway and that, they will put in buried cisterns and things like that for fire suppression. And there's a very calculated way to determine that capacity based on length of runtime, things like that.
Ponds freeze.
What's that?
Yeah. Ponds freeze. So, but there are, I mean, we talked about that in terms of even our fire impact fees, about how they could be spent. And, way back when we had people talking about underground storage systems to do remote fire fighting without fire hydrants.
I agree. I understand the cost of running it, and that's not an option if it's not, but I still think it's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, I think that there needs to be something on site, some sort of system to hammer this thing, because like you said, we have restricted this to 1 day a week, none of that. I mean, it can turn into like, this is the craze, and then here we got an outfit that has a lot more use than we maybe intended. I think it needs some sort of a design, or I would go the buried tanks deal and get a system designed that puts some water on this bad boy. That's what I think.
I did talk to, can you pull up the one, Kate, from Tri-County that shows the location of the hydrants? So from this hydrant to the property line, I believe is less than 1,000 feet. I talked to I didn't have very much luck with our volunteer fire department. And so I talked to several of the guys that are on the fire department in Montrose, and they all said, hey, if we're gonna go fight this fire, we're gonna come in there, we're gonna run over there to that hydrant, everybody carries 1,000 feet of transfer line with them. We would run the transfer line right over to the base of the hill, and then we'd run 2 trucks. And they said that's what, Delta's got 2 trucks, that's what they would do as well. They really didn't think that there was any issue, and that hydrant is pretty close. I mean, yeah, we'd have to cut across the field, but I think that there's a pretty good response time.
Fences or any landscaping obstacles or anything like that on the properties that are between you and that fire hydrant?
There's a couple of fences, but they all have, with that soft line, it's pretty easy to run it right through the fence. So there's no privacy fences, there's no anything that would have to go over the top of.
The ditch. I think we already set a precedence on fire hydrants though this year. Not being close enough to a minor subdivision, so if with some of the stuff, the whole subdivision, there's a fire hydrant within 100 feet of the line, and they're putting in a new one. So that's right in the driveway. So on a major event, and that's a little 3-house subdivision, and this is a major event. I mean, maybe we can talk about if they got too much hydrant there, cap that one off, bring a line over, get it across the ditch, so when they're pulling through, man, they just hammer down. I mean, if that 12 houses doesn't need 2 hydrants, maybe something could be done where that one is Yahtzee and bring it on over, which will open up, should be able to open up some, and you can't look at the future, but if this school is there, give or take, we can't talk about that, but man, we need something needs to be over there on the side of this ditch where you just pull a tour and get after it. Maybe you and them. I just really think something's got to happen.
Okay. Are we okay with where we're at with staff? We're going to open up public comment. I'm going to read from the list. If anyone hasn't, at the end, I'll just do a double check at the end to see if anyone else wants to speak. I have Ron Hayes first.
Yeah, and I live at 2153 Testman Road. Through all of this, when I first found out about it from Brenda, I guess in the back of my mind is, wow, that's a great idea, and Delta County needs it. But what's in it for me? We just built a wonderful house right there, spent a lot of money on it, money which was hard-earned. Now, I see that the county won't even fix the signs. You're not even going as far as where the major intersections are, where the accidents are. You're basing the traffic count on a 2-year-old study, and I can list right now 12 teenagers that have just gotten their driver's licenses from these subdivisions that are driving it every day. So I think a traffic counter needs to be out there. You don't take into consideration that that is zoned ag. There's no signs in that part of the county because they get knocked over by this large ag equipment and they don't get set back up. When the stop sign was stolen at the corner of Snaffle Bit there in Testman Road, it took 10 days to get it replaced. That's, I just see the disappointment, I'm also on the board at the Elks, and ever since we required a security guard at our events, nobody's booked one. So that knocked us out of that. The club manager just verified that. But that's neither here nor there. You want to do a traffic count? Come sit in my front yard all day long, sir. I mean, what you read is awesome, but that's not Testman Road and 1600 Road tomorrow. You got to take into consideration in September too, during harvest, silage, there was corn trucks running today down 1600 Road that they're taking to Foster Farms. It's not just seasonal, it's daily.
You direct
So.
us.
So, yeah, I'm directing to the whole crowd. I'm not singling anybody out. But my disappointment started off the bat with this meeting to know if this is even a moot point, because what she brought up is legitimate. So, we all could be wasting all of our time right here, right now, until that's investigated. So I think on that, I'll just be quiet, and I welcome my property to any of you guys that want to come out there during the day and sit and watch. It's nice, it's peaceful. I don't think what they're planning is gonna hurt anything, but you're not seeing the whole picture. And I look around this room, and I can honestly say, I'm third generation California Mason. There isn't anybody in here that's lived out there longer than I have. And any occupation that can be done out there, I've done. I've even driven a tractor and knocked over a sign in a mailbox. But it was in my heart to always try to go back and do that right thing and put them back up. Who's to say when they're gonna move cows down those roads? You're not looking at the big picture. So that's where I'm gonna stand. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Jerry Kittinger?
They left.
They left. Is there anyone else? I've run through my list. I have Cindy and Zach Brock and Brendan. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this?
I would have one more comment.
Uh-oh.
And that's what happens when the lights go out. All I can say is that what would you guys think if this was happening on your road? That's where I'm going, just look at that. And those roads, oh my gosh. As a matter of fact, on one of those slides, there's a delineator post in the ditch that I went and stood back up yesterday at the corner of 1600 Road and Tessman Road, right by that stump. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, at this time, we're gonna... Oh, well, we don't.
Hey, Jacob. I missed the sign-in sheet. Oh, thanks.
Please state your name and your address.
My name's Claire Hydock. I live at 2739 Ridge Road. Oh, we lost the map. I just want to reiterate, I guess, what was said a couple of weeks ago with the traffic. There is a lot more traffic, I think, out there now than even 2 years ago. Speaking of the signs getting knocked over, so at the corner of D Road where it turns south, becomes Tessman, if we had the map. So there's those two barrier things, they're yellow with black and like, turn this way. So a couple years ago, when I was walking my dog at 4:30 in the morning, I see these headlights out there, and I'm like, is somebody like trying to case somebody's house, with their headlights? No, somebody missed the turn to the right and ran into those bright black and yellow reflective signs. Their headlights were on. One of those has been taken down, it's never been replaced. So getting to Ron's point about, and it's not, nothing against, well, I guess it kind of is, the county, but for safety features, we just need to get stuff like that back up. So, and yeah, this proposal, I think it's a great idea too, maybe not the best place. And certainly that corner does need some attention. So, for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public comment period. Since we don't have Zoom, we'll bring it back to the table. So, usually where we...
Good job, Jacob.
Oh, thank you. Usually where we go from here, I think we want to talk about conditions that we'd like to see. If you would all be amenable to it, I've got 7 or 8 that I've carried over from last week that we didn't get to, and a couple from this week.
Shoot.
And then we can go from there. First condition that fire mitigation plan be submitted. This may include a written plan talking about the 2 trucks, just some kind of documentation. Second condition that music and drink be done by midnight. Third condition that a maintenance agreement with UVWA be in writing. Number 4, a condition to work with the county engineer to establish a mutually agreeable decision on traffic control, which was brought up by the engineer tonight. Number 5, condition that signage for speed limit stop signs at the end of the property, special event signage go up during the events, which would kind of fall under that previous condition. And then the last one, which also falls under prior plan, condition that documentation of the plan, that the documentation of the plan, that it does meet a fire code, as Mr. Prock indicated. From there, I'll open it up to see if anyone else either doesn't like any of those or wants to add more of those. Victoria?
No.
As far as the fire suppression, it is my understanding that Delta County Fire Protection District is going to ask them to meet an FPA code specifically as it pertains to occupancy.
I like it. And that means, again, what?
So their code has specific requirements based on, if it's a single-family home, if it's a multi-family home, so on and so forth, on up the scale. And they have different requirements based on what the maximum occupancy of a building is.
Practically for this, what do you believe that implies?
Closer fire hydrant and internal fire suppression.
So you say you want to include in the conditions that they meet the NFPA codes as recommended by the fire district?
Correct.
Just want to be clear if we make a motion. Okay.
Like that. Right, to be more general and just have a fire mitigation plan to be approved by the fire chief.
There you go.
Fire
There you
captain.
go.
That's easy.
Because you've already got the fire mitigation on there, number 1.
Right, because we don't want to necessarily bring code, building code, fire code. It's hard to us to dictate code. But if the, often fire chief is a.
I like that.
I just want to make sure I'm clear with this. I mean, the fire suppression, fire control, terribly important issue, but if we go that route, are we saying that somehow we're making a recommendation to the county commissioners that they must live with the answer from the fire department regarding the closeness of a fire hydrant?
Or work with them to figure something out where we got tanks in the ground or something crazy, I don't know, something to do it. I don't think we should get involved.
But someone needs to okay it.
Something has to work that he's like, we're good now.
I'm more concerned with the exits and egress.
That's one too.
Structure.
Right?
It's a little too open-ended for
else
me.
on there is fire
There's-
suppression.
We're talking about a major investment on the part of Mr. Prock. And that we already know that a hydrant is a $250,000 price tag. I was never sure if that was to the front of his property or to the middle of his property, but whatever it is. And it would be helpful, seems to me, to look at alternatives to the extreme costs of fire fighting.
And I can't tell you that the NFPA does not allow for that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know that.
And that's what my fear is, that it's black and white, here it is. And then it would be up to commissioners to decide.
You do agree there needs to be something?
Yeah, I'd like to see more.
I mean, going in the neighbor's subdivision just ain't
wide
working
doors
for me.
is not cutting it for
For
me.
suppression?
Yeah, for
Fire extinguishers.
getting water, doing something, I mean, I think it's a long shot to run down that road, come in, snip that subdivision, run to the first one, fill them up and go, or whatever they're gonna do. I just think that with the ditch there and the fences and the yards, and it's not fair to lean on the neighbors that much, they put that in, whoever did that subdivision, when they did it, so.
But are we okay with leaving it up to the fire chief?
Yeah,
I think we should leave it up to fire chief.
He's gonna be one out there with the hose, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
So the condition would be that they prepare a fire mitigation plan that gets approved by the fire chief? Is that,
Yes.
we're just trying
That's what I've
to
got.
narrow it down? Okay,
That's what I
you
think
said.
he had on number 1, if I recall.
And that may include what Todd mentioned, I'm just want to, okay.
Fire chief.
Go ahead.
No.
Anything else? No, that's it. Cindy?
No, sir.
I'd like to revisit the because we're talking about like 32 days, 50 days a year, and then when we kick this Airbnb or whatever, anytime we want it, we kick it back into 365 days a year. You know how those things get crazy in a hurry? I think it's a whole different animal, and I want to go back to that. I don't want to, I just think it needs to be discussed.
I had a condition that I didn't include, which was condition of rooms be rented out only for and around events, and if there's intention to rent, then a separate application be submitted.
That's what we talked about, you weren't here, but we talked about that last time. And I just think with the crowd that was here last time and the crowd that's not here now, and we kind of had that on our tip of our tongue, and now we just go away from it, I don't think it's fair. With this, obviously, this isn't the smoothest outfit that's ran for these folks. We want them to do their thing. I would like to know if that's a deal breaker for them or what. Kind of a deal, but I just feel like, to be fair to this subdivision, to be fair to everybody else, I think last time we came out of here, that wasn't like a deal breaker for you. Is that correct, or?
It wasn't, but I guess I think I should be held to the same standards as all the other houses around me.
Yeah.
And if they want to run those as a VRBO every day, they can. And so that's, that's.
But you're not building the house though, right?
Yeah.
No, you're just having rooms.
There's 10 of them.
Let me present a counterpoint. The extra traffic or the extra impact from 10 rooms rented is going to be minimal, and it's
Yeah.
rare that all 10 will be rented.
But we're talking about this running 365 days a year, and it could.
Sure,
It's
but
probably
you're
going
talking
to.
a couple cars maybe, right? For someone renting a couple
We
rooms.
get back to this feller's point that this is zoned ag area, we're just, this is a small RV park, this is the Airbnb park, this is an event center, we're just like, it's getting crazy here, in my opinion. And I don't think it's fair with where we left off last time, we're transferring over here today, just to look over that. And,
Yeah, sorry, where did we left last time?
that was a point that we were talking about, restricting this, only rent these during the event. And if you rent all 20 of them, whatever, it's during the event, but it's not gonna be ran as like a trailer park.
How do you define an event? The rental of 2 rooms, or?
When the event is, I don't know, that's what we gotta
Right,
get to.
because it could, the
Somebody
one
has a family
benefit-
reunion right
yeah,
around the
a
corner, so
reunion.
that's an event for them.
Right.
I mean, how would that
One
work?
benefit that the community could receive directly is the availability to throw some extra family in some rooms when you got a family reunion. So you're almost taking away the one of the potential benefits that the direct community could use this thing for. Maybe they could give a discount if you live within a quarter mile or something.
And potentially incentivizing larger events for the procs to advertise more larger events because they've got to fill those rooms, I don't know. I'm with you, I think, like, the extra 10 rooms in terms of impact on the community is low, but it is potential added revenue for the county, added benefit for the.
I agree, I just
yeah.
wish when we were having our powwow last time, we would've got a little further and had a resolution while everybody was sitting here.
I
On
think-
that versus now.
What I remember talking about was a condition that specified that these were short-term lodging and not to be rented for long-term
That
lodging
makes sense.
or
That makes-
long-term.
And I think that's still his
RVs.
intention.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that
but I
was,
think
it's still
that's-
short term.
That
But I think
restriction,
that restriction would fit within our conditions and then would escalate to another permit if that type of, if, for whatever reason, not even that
Sure.
Mr. Prock would do it, but some owner in the future wanted to turn that into long-term RV
Right.
park and farm worker housing versus,
yeah, then they're coming back.
yeah.
I mean, it'd be
then they'd have
against
to
his
come
whole
back there.
idea if he did long-term rental.
And it's-
I mean, think about it, all of a sudden he's got somebody who says, hey, I have a wedding coming up, I'm sorry, I've got those already rented for a month. I mean, that would be really his
Right.
disadvantage to do it long-term.
Plus-
Right, but in the future, someone could buy
Sure.
that property and say, well, I've got a tiny home village, I've got a
Yeah.
commercial kitchen,
There you
I've got a one communal space in a tiny home village and 3,
Would we
or,
not
10
require them to
units
come back
for
in
long.
front, because now
Right.
the,
Yeah, that would be-
what they're
different-
doing
That
is
would be the
change.
restriction she's talking about.
Short-term is a good condition.
Short-term is a good condition.
There you
And,
go.
the major impacts to the events, I say give the people the best chance for income and success
I
by getting
agree.
some.
I mean, I don't wanna cut them, but when we were here last time, it was at the topic that, that changed from the last time he was here to here, to now, with everybody. I'm just saying, I wish all those people were still sitting here, so they could jump up and put their 2 cents in, but they're not here today. We changed the game from then.
And they'll have another opportunity at the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, they'll have an opportunity to.
I'll take that, I guess,
Yeah.
they'll get their chance there.
You bet.
Is the short-term rental amenable to you?
It's not me, I don't live next to it, I mean.
Well, but it's in a motion.
But it.
Maybe included in a motion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what's gonna happen. I think it's gonna be a short-term rental, and I think it's gonna be rented out probably about 180 days a year, probably all of them, so.
Nice, good luck.
I think we're gonna have another applicant next week doing the same thing, and we're gonna have to deal with it.
Right.
Probably another one,
Do you have anything?
Nope.
No, just the short-term rental thing was on my mind.
So one of the things that came up today, and I throw it out for the planning commission, is this access realignment that I think we condition, they talked about making that in there. I think we should condition that we do see some type of access realignment with the road coming in. The engineer wasn't even sure whose road was what when we came into this, and I think if he understood that going in, he would have said it'd be best if we realign that road. I think we should ask for some type of access realignment. I mean, do we need new traffic counts based on what Mr. Hayes and some other people are saying? I know those are old traffic counts, but they're 2 years old. That's something that I would think we discussed or was brought up here from the neighbors. Traffic was the issue. I think Mr. Prock if he's talked to all the neighbors and feels like he can mitigate their concerns as far as the traffic that's going there, I'm okay with that. A lot of conversation, Ms. Brown, about just 30 weddings, 35 a year. Yet I don't think you'll want us to condition this on a limited. So essentially, we're giving you unlimited if we don't condition it. And that sort of scares me because, again, it could be 50, it could be 75, it could be 365 events. Essentially what we're saying, and that's really, I don't think what we're trying to approve here. I mean, we're sort of taking you at your word. 35, even if I hedge it by 10 or 20%, it's only, 40 to, so, but if it got into 50 or 60, 70, I feel like personally, that's twice as many. I don't feel like there's enough consensus to restrict you, but it concerns me. You said 2 to 3 a month, and that, I don't know that we're gonna agree on restricting you to that. But I guess if you get that many more and the complaints come from the neighbors, and there's other issues that traffic, et cetera, you may be faced with other issues. As far as fire mitigation, clearly fire is an issue, but I think if we leave it for a fire mitigation plan, it's not, that gets approved by a fire marshal, whoever the authority is, I'm okay with that too. Other than that, all of what Jacob mentioned, they did agree to a restriction on hours of operations to be done by midnight. I think that's something we did not hear from UVWA, but we can condition it on a maintenance agreement with UVWA, and I think that'll just force that. I don't really know what we're saying regarding the signage and speed limits and special events as far as what we're going to sign. I don't know how we're going to make that motion. That was it, access realignment. I think we need to make some condition that includes that entryway for larger vehicles, the limousine with the bride and groom, and if they can't make that turn.
To that point, TK, didn't you have a condition in here, Jacob, that just was for the traffic plan or engineered traffic plan?
Yeah, condition that they work with the county engineer to establish a mutually agreeable decision on traffic control.
And that could be included in that. That'd be right.
Or we could request they submit, it's pretty common, they submit a traffic plan to the traffic engineer over here, and then he works with the...
Recognizing that Mr. Hudson was recommending that access be looked at, if that's part of it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, those are his words.
Yep.
But he's the traffic engineer, this has got to agree.
Okay.
That would address the access issue. They're going to do turning radiuses and all that during traffic plan.
Okay. I'm done.
No, I think that covers most of it for me. You know, if you were to try to limit or event frequency, I think you look at it per week, like 2 per week, Friday, Saturday night, you know, that's 104 events a year on average over the year. You know, so you
Always
could,
not gonna be in
You know,
mid-February.
right, but on average over the year,
this is a
right?
private business.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of
And
restrictions
we're
anyway,
gonna
really.
start restricting some private business activity.
Yeah.
I
don't like that.
I hear you.
Not that an overuse in having it be a real nuisance to the neighborhood is not an issue, but when we get into controlling private business interests, I don't like that.
Well, we did at the asphalt plant, we restricted their private business, so.
Well, for reasons that there were commitments made.
Because they were CDL drivers, that's why. You're broke people.
Steve, do you have any conditions you'd like to see?
No, I just, as part of the traffic management plan, I would like to see signage, but I think you had that in there. And I would like, and I don't know that we can require it, but I'd sure like to see your advertising. You would do recommended routes for people coming from Montrose or coming from Grand Junction.
What kind of balloons you want, blue or purple?
I don't care.
Put that in there.
But getting it away from
I'd say if that was. part of the
Testament
traffic plan-
and getting it away for kids on bicycles the best you can in your own advertisement makes a hell of a lot of sense to me, for your interest and for everybody else's interest.
Do you feel like that would be covered under the traffic control?
Well, I think it ought to be, but I mean, it's, you guys aren't flying with this stuff I bring up, even though it's eminently sensible. But it's sort of up to them. I'm not sure we can require how they advertise, but, I mean, I originally thought about specified routes, and nobody was gonna go with that. Although we have done that, we did that tried to do it on the solar site.
No impact fee today, Steve? Are you gonna hit the impact deal?
Pardon me?
Impact fee deal? All these extra?
No, we asked them to take a look at that, and the guys said they saw it, everything was up to snuff, unless there's signage put in, that would be an impact.
Jacob?
So I'd entertain a motion, if there would be one on the floor.
I'll make a motion for approval, to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners for said subdivision, not subdivision, the event center with the following conditions, if you'll read it.
I can read that for you. Condition 1, condition that rooms and RV spaces be short-term rentals, and if they are to be long-term, a separate application be submitted. Condition 2, condition that a fire mitigation plan be submitted and approved by the fire chief. Condition 3, that music and drink be done by midnight. Condition 4, that a maintenance agreement with UBWA is on file. Condition 5, that they work with the county engineer to establish a mutually agreeable decision on traffic control. And condition 6, the documentation that the building plans meet the fire code. There's a motion on the floor, is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion on said motion? Hearing none, for the two vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
I'm going to have to abstain from voting due to a conflict of interest, and due to our bylaws, I have to state on the record what my conflict of interest is, and that is Part 3 of A72. I'm going to have to abstain from voting because this commission goes by Robert's Rules of Order, and the laws that I want to quote on the record that constitute me in abstaining from voting are the Colorado State Constitution Amendment 41, A through E, Ethics in Government, State Statute 30-28-104, State Statute 18-8-404, and 18-8-405.
Thank you. With that, motion passes. Mr. Mr. Brock, you will be seeing the Board of County Commissioners sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I got a question. Like on this sort of permit, does it get reviewed like every, is there some sort of, it's just forever?
It's
Or is it
kind of like a
another
run period.
Water bottle.
So, yeah, I mean, they are subject to remaining in compliance with their conditions.
Gotcha.
So they get out of compliance. But other than that, it stays on the.
Okay, so we're moving into C on our agenda. Actually, before we do, let's take a 5-minute comfort break and use the restroom, get a drink.
Thank you.
We'll come back and we'll talk highlights.
Recording stopped.
Yeah. I know. I feel better.
Frustrating, isn't it?
She's really bad.
And some things never
Artie, you used to show up here all day.
You can't. We started that with one business, they just like travel, and then you tell us how, it's like people wanting to go a certain way, they go to the park.
They're all on my desk.
Yard sale.
I ate a lot.
So if somebody comes and has their family stay the night, is that, you know what I mean? Then you could have it where one of your events could be one person staying the night, and then that's just not.
And what a nice thing to offer the subdivisions, all of a sudden you have people that come in for an event, instead of going downtown to a hotel. You know, they would have a place if they chose to be rented, that's kind of nice.
I got a 98 piece I built my house. I am shocked if the road doesn't.
People that don't want land.
And that property next to me. Not shocked. And you know what? Hey, it's their property.
They just get them out against land use.
They're making money.
Not what we got to do.
What we can do.
We can't win for anything.
Now, I don't know. Oh, yeah.
It is, yeah. It's about eating neighbors.
We're governed by Robert's Rules of Order, you can tell. We're governed by our bylaws.
Oh, just our bylaws.
Well, they have, and they weren't.
So what it is they are bylaws.
So they're on every meeting.
Egoistic.
Trying to
control these poor people here, making points of importance,
It's more viable. They're right to do that. But the context
We don't think anything. Here,
is not
Artie finds food all the
misunderstood
time.
or not
He's like a squirrel. He was trying to get Queen here to get a pizza and he wasn't joking. God, just, you know, he's not joking when he wants that pepperoni pizza. Usually he comes in with a bag of food.
He's got a word.
He's just like, it's pretty fast. So
That's fine.
It was less chaos than it is now. We had a specific development that didn't do anybody any good. Zoning,
it's going to look like
saving agriculture. If you don't believe that, you don't believe that. You're wrong.
I got another
I bet you.
And it was allowable.
I met
Their property rights. We didn't rezone.
Yeah, you did.
We zoned it. We didn't rezone.
About 300,000-400,000 to get there.
That's knowingly, arbitrarily, and refrain from performing a duty imposed by the bylaws, violates the
Designation.
It is the second.
Yeah.
We never had that. What we had.
Which is considered an offense
We have all kinds of complaints about agriculture. You may have heard of this. The right to farm, sharing right to farm. They have a right to farm policy. And other than by and large, they go, that's a right to farm. Came around the chicken. A lot of that kind of stuff. So a lot of farmers they were under the gun with all kinds of irrigation equipment with lights on, going on. Other times you're farming. They were by and large, the zone. All you took was to protect your interests. And doing away with this land use bill, you would take them back to ground zero and be so unpredictable for ag guys in particular. That's what these folks that you're saying.
Well, I understand.
Already getting in trouble.
Don't look at me and say I don't. You did zone it, so that they could put a grass, I mean, that's a grass plan. You did zone it.
It was never zoned before.
It doesn't matter, because we zoned it so they could.
They could put a bass plan.
Yes, and it was ag land.
When will the,
There are properties, you know, you're very interested in property.
So much more.
They had a property right.
Only after you zoned them.
No, they had it before. They had an unlimited property right.
We were in the master plan before that started, and you ran right over us.
You are.
It did.
No, you're wrong.
I've been part of this, I've been part of this for 6 years.
Oh,
And it's been screwed up for 6 years.
What?
You heard me, I didn't stutter. Well, don't worry about it. Let's go back one.
Recording in progress.
Thank you.
We're going to bring back to the table, we have on our agenda C, Planning Commission bylaws. We'll take it to Carl.
Actually, I could probably.
We just have one sentence from the county attorney. Again, this is the memo from the county attorney. Confidential and privileged legal advice. However, one sentence can be put here. A planning commission officer who has served 2 years in a particular position is ineligible to be re-elected to that position until after 1 year has passed.
In light of the debate this evening, it would be my recommendation, Mr. Chair, that you defer this item and ask for an executive session with the county attorney to actually get legal advice from the county's legal counsel.
Do I need a motion for that?
I would, yeah.
I'll make a motion to do what Carl said.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so the discussion is we'll come together with John Mayer. We've had to do this before in the past. Go to the big man, we'll ask him all his questions and hopefully he gives us the answers.
But the way it is right now, you could serve 2 years, then just not serve a year, but you could always be reelected back to serve another 2 years, as long as you have a year gap in between, correct?
That is correct, and if the chair vacates the position for any reason, the vice chair becomes the chair, and then the planning commission elects a new vice chair.
So would that, if that did happen, would that individual just fill out the rest of that term of that person and then still have an additional 2 years? Or would it be from the time that they took over that position, it would be 2 years
That's not clear.
Okay.
Now,
Just sorry to ask.
But I'll also add, the planning commission is not obligated to have bylaws. So that's something that you may also want to be thinking about. If either you want to amend your bylaws.
Okay.
Obviously, one thing relative to the membership is not consistent with statute. So that would be one thing. And then if you wanted to have a different conversation about how the chair or vice chair elections work, you could have that conversation as well, provided it's consistent with statute. Or you could just not have bylaws at all.
I have a question. So, from what I've read, the Planning Commission, okay, I'll reference Colorado State statute. Colorado State statute states that the Planning Commission shall adopt such rules and regulations governing its procedures as it may consider necessary or advisable, and shall keep a record of its proceedings, which shall be open to inspection of by the public at all times. The Board of County Commissioners has authority to employ experts and staff and shall pay such expenses as may be deemed necessary for carrying out the powers conferred and the duties prescribed in this article. So if the Planning Commission shall adopt such rules and regulations governing its procedures, what are those rules and regulations?
It said as necessary, or as it deems necessary.
Yes, but it still shall adopt a set of
As it
rules.
deems necessary.
That's the reason for my recommendation.
So
until
what
they're
are
at
the-
county's legal
As it
counsel
deems
is
necessary,
able to be
as
there.
we deem it necessary.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what that said.
We're gonna ask John. We don't know it. That'll be the best thing.
He's got 8 years getting that.
We have a motion and a second.
There's a motion and a second. Last thing I'll say is that if we do make any changes to our bylaws, it will be publicly notified. We will have a public hearing on it. We're not gonna go to this exec session and do away with all our bylaws, so folks in the room and online don't think that's what's gonna happen. Just know we need to square some things away apparently.
What did he say?
Motion on the floor, second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. That brings us to D, Department Report. Carl.
Couple items, Mr. Chair. First of all, at the last board meeting, the board asked to have an item on March 21st regarding the solar moratorium, which effectively expired March 6th. It was initially established for 6 months or until land use code was adopted with standards, which had not happened. And so there will be an item on the March 21st agenda for the board to consider extending that moratorium for 6 months. Also, they've given direction for me to put out an RFQ for surveying services, primarily for subdivision reviews. So we'll be doing that. And then also, finally, the land use code, there is a work session tomorrow at 1 p.m. with the Board of County Commissioners. And they'll be reviewing a red line of the 2021 land use code per their direction on March 1st at the work session following the public hearing.
Not March 1st, April.
No, March 1st.
It was from March 1st,
From
that's why
March
they're
1st.
having it.
I'm sorry. I thought you said you were public hearing on March 1st. Work session. Okay.
So once the board completes their review of the red line, whatever they want to add, delete, modify, it will be referred to your planning commission, and you'll have up to 30 days to report back to the Board of County Commissioners, and then they will have a public hearing and take action.
So at this point, all public hearing on land use code will be at the Board of County Commissioners.
That is correct. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
March.
What are we intended to do then if we don't? We're not having a
Well, they're gonna send us a red line.
And what are we doing?
Give them our
The
comments.
same, I mean, the way the statute is written is you accept, reject, or suggest modifications, and then the board will take that under consideration at a public hearing.
And we have 30 days to do that, for the time we receive it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Or I suppose no comment.
Or could be. But
That would be an accept.
Are there any other commissioner comments, requests, referrals?
I have a question. Where's Lane? Lane?
Lane had cataract surgery, and today
Is he still part of this thing?
He's an associate.
He's
an
an
associate member, and Victoria is the sitting member. Lane would have voted tonight. So
I must have missed all that.
How was Japan?
That's outside this meeting.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Now you can ask her.
Now you can do a slideshow.
Nice. Nice show.
I can stare at you as long as you can stare at me. Easy, killer.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are all recorded for yourself. The show is recorded. Thank you.
Believe me. How's it going?
You don't look like well representative of us. You don't look at all. For your action, not for your, what you say.
If I take it as a physical threat.
I didn't say anything about
I appreciate that. The lawyers go to school for a really long time for reasons. Somebody cares and she was law school online.
Nothing to say, just
And do what she did in this meeting.
you can take that.
I think she needs to go to some advice there somewhere. We don't.
need a lawyer to be
Let's see what they say.
We need to do the right thing. We don't need to put everybody up.
5 minutes until the commission either, then that's all I said.
Now, she's the only one that has.
We need to go to.
How's it going?
I'm sorry, I can tell you.
Dan, I'm gonna get home. I gotta go.
He will be-